You know, in the history of sports, some stories are all about the trophies and the records. But every now and then you get a story that's about something more. Something that shows a level of dominance so absolute and a story of resilience so inspiring that it just changes how you think about greatness. Today, we're talking about the incredible career of Monica Seles, a story that really has two powerful, distinct halves.
Let's start with just one number that puts her right up there with the all-time greats: 9. 9 career Grand Slam titles. That alone tells you you're dealing with a legend of the sport.
But here's where the story gets absolutely wild. That number 9 doesn't even begin to tell you what happened. Of those 9 major titles, an incredible 8 of them she won before she even turned 20. Just think about that. She built a Hall of Fame resume before most players even hit their prime.
So, how in the world does a teenager do that? Well, her journey started with one of the most explosive, record-shattering entries into a professional sport that we have ever seen. The first huge record falls in 1990. On the famous red clay courts of the French Open in Paris, Seles becomes the youngest champion the tournament had ever seen, a truly historic moment.
And get this, she was just 16 years old, a teenager, completely dominating seasoned pros on one of the biggest stages in tennis. And you know what? This was no fluke. It was a sign of everything that was about to come.
Because just 1 year after that historic French Open win, she climbed all the way to the top of the mountain. At only 17, she was officially the #1 ranked player in the entire world, one of the youngest ever to do it.
So the question is, how was she doing this? It wasn't just raw talent, you know? It was a totally revolutionary playing style that her opponents just could not figure out. Her secret weapon? It all came down to her grip. Now, almost every player out there uses one hand for their forehand. Seles? She used 2 hands on both her forehand and her backhand. This was just so rare, and it was the source of her game-changing power. It gave her this incredible stability, letting her hit these flat, powerful shots and create angles the sport had really never seen before.
So let's break down what that actually looked like on the court. It meant she had this tremendous power, but with almost pinpoint control to put the ball anywhere she wanted. The angles were totally unpredictable. And of course, it all came with her famous on-court grunt. That was the soundtrack to the sheer intensity she brought to every single point.
So you take that game-changing style, you mix it with her insane competitive fire, and what do you get? Well, you get a run that people still talk about in awe today. It's widely and correctly considered one of the most dominant stretches in the entire history of tennis.
And this timeline, it just lays it all out there. After she becomes world #1 in 1991, she just goes on this unbelievable tear. Between 91 and early 93, she walks into 8 Grand Slam tournaments and wins 7 of them. 7! I mean, that consistency against the world's best is just breathtaking. By the start of 1993, she was, for all practical purposes, completely unbeatable.
And then, right at the absolute peak of her powers, the unthinkable happens. The whole story just takes this awful, tragic turn that changed everything.
It was April 1993. During a match in Hamburg, Germany, Seles was the victim of a shocking on-court stabbing attack by a spectator. In one single moment, her world, and the entire tennis world, was just turned completely upside down.
Now, the physical wound? That healed pretty fast, but the psychological trauma? That was immense. She wouldn't play a professional tennis match again for over 2 years. In an athlete's career, that is an absolute eternity.
So that brings us to the real question at the heart of her story, right? After having everything taken from you in such a horrific way, how do you even begin to find the strength to come back?
Because this next chapter of her life, it isn't about dominance anymore. It's all about courage. It's a comeback that would show the entire world what true resilience really looks like.
And her return was just step-by-step incredible. She comes back to the tour in 1995, and what does she do? She reaches the US Open final in her very first Grand Slam back. Astonishing. But she wasn't done. Just a few months later, in early 1996, she completed the comeback, winning the Australian Open.
And that win, that incredible win in Australia, that would be her 9th Grand Slam. It was also her last. It was just this emotional, triumphant peak to one of the most courageous comeback stories in the history of sports.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, what is the legacy Monica Seles really left behind?
because it's so much more than just amazing stats.
I mean, look, the stats on paper are just mind-blowing. 9 Grand Slams, world number 1 at 17 years old, a playing style that literally changed how the game was played. And her story also crossed borders, as she proudly represented both her birth country of Yugoslavia and later her adopted home, the United States.
You see, her story was always these two things, right? Unbelievable achievement and unbelievable resilience. And in 2009, the sport of tennis gave her its highest possible honor, recognizing both sides of her incredible journey.
She was, of course, inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. And that's the ultimate honor. It's not just for winning. It's for athletes who leave a lasting, unforgettable impact on the game itself, both on and off the court.
And that really brings us to the final question, the one that makes her story so powerful. When you think of Monica Seles, what defines her legacy more? Is it the absolute, untouchable dominance of her youth and all the titles she won? Or is it the incredible strength and resilience she showed when facing true adversity? Honestly, it's probably both. And that's what makes her one of sport's most compelling and unforgettable figures.